Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Voices of Effectiveness. I think this could be in danger of being episode 6. Feels like
Indeed.
the Star Trek series. It's just a franchise that keeps on giving. And I think our audience of 10 is now possibly knocking on the door of 20. So thank you for our loyal viewers and an ever more fragmented media audience. So we don't take you for granted. But I'm delighted today to welcome to the conversation Dean Taylor, an old sparring partner of mine from when we both first arrived in New Zealand in sort of 2004-ish, far too many years ago. Dean came in from Australia, I came in from the UK, and we worked at Saatchi's together. But Dean is joining us today as CEO and co-founder of Contagion. And they are going to be talking, we're going to be having a conversation about a campaign that its sort of informal title is A Crappy Challenge. And it was all about, I'll let Dean talk about it, but it's a really interesting case study. I'm excited to talk to Dean about it because it brings together a bit of a technology solution on the ground. It's very regionally focused. And it was another campaign for Tourism New Zealand, this time focused on the domestic market. And if you remember last week, we were talking to Rory Gallery from Special and Brodie about the Good Morning World campaign. This is from a couple of years back, and actually it tackled the issue of freedom camping and what that was doing to our own backyard. So in a way, New Zealanders note, as we all rush out into the hinterland, this is a very relevant case study. But Dean, lovely to have you joining us.
Great.
Thanks so much for being part of it. And, you sort of know the format. We'll just get talking about the work. And I'd just love to start talking to you about the brief and how it came about.
Yeah, well, the brief was actually a bit of a proactive one as well. We knew that there was some problems with sort of outliers of the backpackers going around, and there was a fundamental problem in calling it freedom camping, i.e. they came here and they believe they can camp anywhere and they're as free with their behavior as well. But there were some particularly irksome incidents of people getting caught literally crapping on the streets, or people would be walking around Queenstown Lake and they'd find toilet paper, etc. So it was pretty nasty stuff.
Yeah, not good.
Look, it's worth $250 million a year to the New Zealand economy, and it's actually the biggest section of the tourism dollar coming in, because they stay longer and they spend more. But when they're here, they want to be frugal and they want to really get that experience. So they go off and get their camper vans, etc. But as I say, their toilet habits were less than desirable, hence a crappy challenge. So we've been tracking this a little bit, and we were speaking to Tourism New Zealand, Stephen England Hall, Brodie and those guys, etc. And we said, look, we need to obviously do something about this. But there was a problem, because you don't want to be lecturing people when they come here. Oh, young man, don't poop in the woods, etc. But part of tourism's vision, part of their identity is you arrive as a visitor, but you leave as whānau. We welcome you as family. So how could we still do this in an entertaining way and get on board with them and really make them feel as though they were learning something, they were getting some culture, but at the same time they were going to toe the line and start. So it wasn't just about their toilet antics. It was people waking up in the morning, finding people in their back garden camping, people just on the side of the road, dangerous places. So we wanted to somehow politely herd them or incentivize them to go to the right places, preferably with a toilet.
Yeah. So it's this is kind of interesting, because it's sort of like a behavior change campaign.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And you had to try and create a construct that would encourage them to do more of the right stuff and the right behaviours, and be just that little bit more respectful when they came into our backyard than they might have thought. We can literally have the freedom to do anything we want. Yeah. I mean, people with very different, people have different habits, and I guess it was just about nudging people and encouraging them to do what we would like them to do in terms of respecting the land, which we know is a big part of the New Zealand psyche.
Yeah, and I think it was really interesting because people come here from the bigger cities, Paris, Frankfurt, etc., and they're coming from big urban environments to this wonderful free place with this wonderful vistas, but they just weren't treating it with respect. And the idea of Māori and Māori legends is really important. So kaitiaki and looking, being guardians of the land, how could we actually give them some culture and say, actually, when you come here, you're a co-guardian. So in many ways, we were getting them on board to be it's almost like a bit like social media, getting them to be evangelists for our own environment by coming up with a campaign that both gifted them something and also gifted them knowledge.
Yeah. So that was kind of really the sort of insight, wasn't it? Was that the reason why people are coming here is because they want to feel really part of the community.
Yeah.
And I guess your way into solving the problem was this idea of almost kind of co-opting them into being one of us, and sort of and not doing that classic finger wagging stuff that government campaigns can fall into the habit of.
Yeah, and look, one of the so the topography in New Zealand can be replicated, whether it's Chile or Finland, all of that. So the one thing we've got which is very different, which is obviously the people, but the idea of Māori and Māori legends, and nobody wants to come on holiday and be a tourist. I'm going to be really involved with the culture. So we thought, okay, well, let's do that then. And they all arrive and get the cheapest camper van they can, etc., and off they go. And so we first of all, we said, well, what can we give them? So there's a Māori legend about Tane's baskets of knowledge, and goes up to the heavens and gets knowledge. So we actually created some wonderful designs done in te reo and by a Māori artist, that each of these different hand-woven baskets that, by the way, were recyclable, because we don't want more rubbish blowing around.
Very good.
And on there was the legend of why you look after land kaitiaki, and then the 4 rules of camping, just looking after yourself, etc. And also, please use the toilet in a tongue-in-cheek way. But that wasn't going to be enough, because the problem with this audience is when they come, they go, they blow off. So you can't contract them a little bit on Facebook, not that much. Certainly, then they're not going to normal media channels, and outdoor wouldn't work. And there's a real currency in spending as little money as possible. I can survive on $1 a day. But one thing that we knew they were addicted to was Wi-Fi, and everything's a gram. You know, it doesn't exist unless you've Instagrammed it, etc. Like old people like me and you do, eh, Murray? It's always all over Instagram.
The Insta what?
Insta what? It's on the internet, you know. It's taking off.
I thought that was a type of coffee granule.
Yes, and a fine coffee it is too. We digress, and go camp. Anyway, so we looked at a lot of the internet cafes and what, so they were all gravitating there. So we said, well, hang on a second. First of all, we'll get you your camper van. So we'll give you a basket of knowledge. And when you get your camper van, they got a key ring as well. But we created a backpacker Wi-Fi network. And really, by signing up to them, they were also signing up to electronic tagging, because once they'd logged in somewhere, we could work out where they were going. So Wi-Fi, it wasn't that hard to do, and it's again one of those things as an advertising person, and certainly I was an ex-suit, you go, right, I can solve this. So I called up some old friends at the telcos, and me and you used to work on where and say, can I create a Wi-Fi network? I said, yeah, that's not that hard actually. So we basically put emitters at public toilets and eyesites all around the country, the main sites where they were, and but to camp there, they had to watch a minute-long video on how to camp responsibly. Yeah, and if they camped at a few of these places, they could get extra bags and sequentials. So they were going away with a bit of culture. They had to watch the public information, an ad essentially.
Yes.
And it worked out rather well. And look, it was hugely successful for them, obviously winning the FA. So does that give you an idea of the campaign a little bit?
Yeah. So just step us through. Let's say I've just arrived in my camper van, and how did I experience the campaign then? So what would I have seen in what sequence?
Yeah, so you would have arrived at the airport, obviously, and then you would go to get your camper van. Immediately you got your camper van, you get one of these lovely recyclable baskets, and on your key ring would be this information to either go for the Wi-Fi sites, and then to go. I'll go log on Facebook, so we could track you on Facebook as well. Not track you, of course.
Engage with you on Facebook.
Engage with you. And we also did alerts on your phone, so when you got near a Wi-Fi area, it would say where it is. So,
nice.
So you would immediately got your keys. It was there. You got your basket, and then it was at the main centres, because obviously a set backpacker trail where people are going. And then once we got people there, we wanted them taking photographs of each other, etc. So it became a bit of a nexus for backpackers to go there. Nay, Shantytown. No, I didn't.
That's great. I love the sort of sequential sort of repetition, but the variations as well. So you get the physical bags, the kite, and you get the key ring, and you get the introduction to the elements of it, and then you get alerts of where it is, and then you get the, if you want to use it, then you have to watch the video. So you're just reinforcing at every point. This is how we do things around here.
Yeah. And look, it was a real problem. I'm just going to read you some quotes that we had at the time from Stuff magazine. This is 2018, and we ran it again last year. It's, Akaro locals demand poo patrol to battle waste left by freedom campers. And Kaikoura couple sick of freedom campers defecating on their beach. Of course, freedom campers not welcome. The knock-on effect was that people were leaving the country going, well, New Zealanders are not very friendly, and that's one of our biggest things. Yeah. So we had to do that. So the objectives were change the behaviour, change the perception that freedom camping is absolutely free, but encourage destination readiness. So when they got there, it was all ready for them, the campsite. And to educate the wrongdoers without drawing mainstream attention. We didn't want ads in papers saying this is a problem, because then it becomes a problem. Yeah. And look, of the 100,000 backpackers, there was probably 250 people that were doing it that was causing all the headlines. Yeah. So it had to be done. We were also trying to cause a little bit of social pressure to go, if the backpackers saw people doing things, well, hey, don't do that, Yeah. So that was.
So I guess the sort of higher goal was almost to try and diffuse that hostility that could be very dangerous for the tourist economy. Yeah. Of a growing disquiet between locals and tourists, and the sense that we're not, people aren't being welcomed, and that word of mouth gets back to overseas markets and so on and so forth. You've got to nip that in the bud. So the campaign's kind of designed to diffuse that tension.
Yeah. And both you and me know, because obviously we've guests and now call this place home, is Kiwis are the loveliest people in the world. They're welcoming, they're kind, certainly compared to Australians. Anyway, I'll stop there. But so it wouldn't have been fair, because this was outrageous behaviour from outliers that we had to stop. So there was a knock-on effect, absolutely.
And this is in the days before the unruly British tourist family arrived.
Before the gypsy pikeys came.
That's right. Before. So this was a problem then. So Dean, talk me through how you set objectives for the campaign and talked about sort of tracking effectiveness of the campaign, because it was a beautifully orchestrated set of touch points, both digital and physical.
So we were obviously looking at people who immediately watched the video there, how long they watched it. Once they'd logged in, we could literally hotspot and track them around the country. So we were after people going to more than one. We were serving ads up on Facebook, and when you clicked on it, then we could get you and remarket to you. Yeah. I think we gave away 20,000 of the bags. So that was there. Yeah. But there was some really interesting effectiveness things. So Stephen England Hall essentially said, the Sea of Tourism said, I'm sick to death of getting 20 emails a week. And also emails from the minister saying that this has to stop. Yeah. So quotes. The previous summer, the inbox of the ministers and local government and the inbox were overflowing with complaints relating to freedom campers. And this summer, this is Stephen England Hall, I had none. The minister might have had 3, Mayor Bob only had a couple. So it's easy to say something shifted, and what shifted, we were educating, engaging, informing people about what was expected before the behaviour happened. So that's a better plan. But there were some hard numbers as well here. So
those are this.
Yeah. So the decreased freedom camping fines in the Taupo district by 95%. Distributed 25,000 of the bags, the ketes, 10,000 key rings to major camper van and rental operators. In fact, there was little skirmishes over people because they weren't getting enough of them, as you can well imagine. And at over 100 eyesights, 30,000 users logged onto the Freedom Camping Network. So we call it the Freedom Camping Wi-Fi Network. Yeah, one of the better things. So it was quite nice to dress it up as, hey, you've even got your own Wi-Fi network when you come. We reached 50,000 users looking to purchase Freedom Camping capable vehicle on Trade Me. So that's right. If you were looking on Trade Me, because a lot of people don't go to the rentals, they'll buy just a kind of
and sell it at the end of the trip.
Then we did a hookup with campers, Campmate and Rankers, which is the apps which tells you where to camp. And they're quite good actually, because if you go to an area, it's got proximities about where's the best place to freedom camp here, there. But we were feeding messages through them, and we were tracking them through the Rankers apps as well, and Campermate. So that you had to agree to a certain thing. So with your mobile phone, we were effectively knowing where you were, and so that was good there. So we could see that. App usage increased 12% on Campmate and 20% over the peak period on Rankers. And over the summer period, we saw an additional 24,000 visitors who intended to Freedom Camp, up 12% there. So we've actually got people increasing freedom camping because they got used to what the rules were there. So
yes. Yes, I guess it made freedom camping more attractive because you knew that more people were going to be doing it the right way. So,
and also there was a bit of confusion about, if I go freedom camping, where do I go? Well, we're actually giving people instructions. So we were stopping the bad behavior, but also giving them almost an itinerary for their
channeling them a bit more effectively. Yeah,
that's
great. So that's really nice there, because what you've sort of sketched out is kind of, there's a whole, and you've clearly got it in the paper, and it was great that you guys were awarded an Effie for this, because you've been able to make the case between almost everything from the leadership of tourism and the minister going, great, we believe there's been an effect, all the way through to things like the proxy of fines, the proxy measure of like levels of fines being given out, that dropped considerably across key regions. I know that's documented in your paper. And then you've got the sheer reach that you achieved through all of those different channels, and you've been able to kind of stage those out. So this is a good learning for people who are trying to think about structuring measures of success as they think about putting campaigns together, is think about that chain of effectiveness that goes all the way up to the CEO saying, thank God my inbox was empty and I wasn't getting more complaints because I've got other things I need to be working on. So it's a fantastic chain of evidence that you were able to put together for the paper.
Yeah, and I think that's important, isn't it? You've got those soft measures at the top. You know, we made their lives easier, and there's obviously better sentiment coming through. Then those really hard numbers beneath them. And I think that's the nature of an effectiveness paper, really, isn't it? You know, and if you can't get the head of your organization, whatever client organization, say, yes, that made a difference, well, then, you know, that's probably not going to be a winning paper, because they do need to make a physical difference to the company.
Yes.
Obviously, both in fiscal terms, but obviously here in sentiment and behavioral change.
Yeah. That's great. So, thank you so much for stepping through the campaign. And the question, I think, I'd love to get you to reflect on, Dean, and it can be beyond this campaign, clearly, because you've got a wealth of experience. But if you were giving advice to people coming up through the industry about how to go about making sure their campaigns were more likely to be effective than not, and in terms of baking effectiveness in up front, which is one of the major things we want to keep stressing through this series, and that we do at the Strategic Planning Lab, and that, you know, we do whenever we can through the FEs, etc. What would your advice be? Practical advice be for, say, you know, an up-and-coming senior account manager, account director who's sort of responsible for kind of trying to get a campaign through?
And for me, and I think you know this about me, Murray, I'm a big fan of the media side of our business as well. So, and I think with digital, and with most, you know, we can set up with the media agency. Obviously we're integrated, so I've got a media agency in-house. But I can go to them and say, right, I want some real hard measures. What are we going to do here? Is it going to be Facebook engagement? Is it going to be views? Is it going to be completed views? So there's getting that up front. And what's the reach I'm going to get on that? What would be the normal reach? What's the benchmark I'm going to get from that? So I can immediately set up those harder measures there. And if I know they're going to give me that reach, well, that helps me in terms of getting my sentiment and that sort of thing through as well. But also then getting the senior clients on board saying, right, what do we really want? What do you want to achieve? What's important to you? What can we share? So we made sure with this freedom camping beforehand, we sort of started to write the Effie paper beforehand.
Right.
Not because we wanted to win an Effie, although obviously that's helpful, but to go, right, and if you're not being measured from the start, then how can you hope to get another job out of the client? Because you've got to have faith that it's going to work in your own writing. So you're all, with most campaigns, you should be writing a mental Effie paper, both in terms of hard and soft measures.
Yeah, that's a great observation, Dean. I think the notion that you should go through the mental discipline of saying, how am I constructing a chain of evidence to know that this would work? I think once I heard it described as, what's the model of your advertising and how you expect it to work? and then what metrics can you peg to that to be able to say, well, we're going to be, and I love your other point as well, which I think is really important, which is when you're dealing with particularly social media metrics or media metrics, knowing what your benchmarks are, finding what good looks like, and then setting yourself a goal to beat that, as opposed to just at some point cobbling together some numbers after the fact and going, oh, look, numbers, we did a lot of stuff. I think that's a really critical point, that people think about all this stuff and have those discussions, both ultimately what clients want to achieve. And as we know, Dean, that can often be soft as much as hard, you know? But what do those key stakeholders want to achieve from this? And then also what are those metrics and those benchmarks? So you can write and put together a case that says, this is best in class, or this has a right to be considered best in class.
And I think on that point as well, what we're trying to do all the time is hit them with a multitude of different messages in different mediums, and then cross-reference that multi-channel approach, because then you've got more of a chance with your paper to go, well, if we didn't believe that metric, we can see this one and this one and this one. And so it becomes an equation that becomes more than the whole, if that makes sense, because you can see it all together. Yeah. Yes,
that's right. You almost can create a compelling, this and then that and then this and then, and if that's not enough for you, what about this? And you create all sorts of measures that create an overwhelming sense that it cannot, beyond reasonable doubt, it must have been the work that created that impact. And that you can isolate the impact.
We wouldn't, and I know you wouldn't, we wouldn't submit something if we only got one metric or even two metrics, probably if only three. In a way, the CEO's comments and the minister's comments, that was great, but in a way, that was the last thing we got.
Yeah, you know? It's icing on the cake, isn't it? Yeah.
It's almost like you're building a pyramid of effectiveness. The foundations have to be the solid numbers, and then you're going up a Maslow's hierarchy, as it were, to the self-actualization point at the top. That's really up itself, isn't it? But I'll give you that one.
I know exactly where you're going with it, Dean. I love it. We love a good pyramid.
Love a good Maslow's hierarchy, turning in his grave right now.
That's right, Maslow's going, that's not what I meant at all.
I never meant that.
Don't write in, people. Dean wasn't literally saying that was Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
No. Just an appropriated needs.
But I think that's, I think that's really well said. And I think there is evidence to suggest from Peter Field's work that you have to have campaigns with a number of objectives and with multiple numbers of metrics prove out effectiveness better. I think he talks about having a basket or a balanced scorecard of metrics that you need to be aiming for up front. And I think you're kind of doing a bit of a hope and a prayer.
Well, the other thing is, you've got a loaded gun, right? You're trying to say, well, I think this because I did it. There's two immutable truths in life. Fastest car in the world, a rental car. What's the best idea in the world? Your own. So you're going in there, going, it's great. It's really working. Is it? And immediately I go, well, I don't believe you. Well, here's one piece of evidence. Well, I still don't believe you. Three, four, okay. All right, now I'm on board. So you really have to go to town on it, don't you?
Yeah. And I think the other thing to point is that you guys won the FE in Best Integrated.
Yeah, Best Integrated. And we won the Beacons Media Award for it as well.
Yes, that's right. So in those two shows that demand evidence and hard evidence as submission of effect. But I think the fact that you had to orchestrate, and I think this is where your integrated proposition is really, really strong, and the integrated solution, because you're able to orchestrate. Every element of that campaign had a reason for being. There was no indulgence factor in this campaign. Everything in its place and a place for everything in order to drive the effect. And you were able to give a really strong account of that in the paper, which is very important learning for people entering integrated awards. It doesn't just mean you did lots of stuff. It means everything has to have a reason for being, and it all interconnects, and it's mapped across a customer journey.
Everything had a role, and every piece was effective.
Yes.
So whether we were giving out key rings, kettes, or whatever the instruments of the campaign were, each instrument, it's like a sheet of music. Every line of music was effective in its own right, and then the whole was as well. And I think that's the integrated FE, isn't it? Yeah,
that's lovely. It's a sort of, we should rename that category Best Symphony of Creativity.
That's right. We had to, yes. Anyway, indeed we go again, sir.
No, I think that's well said. Well said again, because I think too often people are still too naive and integrated, or it becomes a dumping ground category where you go, oh, well, we won there and we want to have another crack at a medal, so we'll stick it in there. You've got to, these integrated campaigns are disciplined in their own right.
Yeah.
They're complex, they have multiple moving parts, and they usually have to be mapped to a complex customer journey, such as a tourist journey, literal journey. So I think it's fantastic.
And the other thing was, you couldn't track these people with normal media. We had to actually create a media network for them. And that was, again, in this day and age, we know we can't broadcast at people, but how do you get them, if you couldn't actually get them in a media at all? Well, hang on a minute, we'll create a media for you. Because of technology can do that now. And it wasn't as tough as we thought it would be. And now it runs every year because the Wi-Fi network's set up for them.
Yes. So this is the other lovely thing about it is it's replicable now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So again, it's not one of these one-hit sort of wonder campaigns. It's been repeated and it continues to suppress, continued in its second year to contribute and build on those effects, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Look, Dean, it's been great catching up. Thank you so much for stepping us through the campaign, it's brilliant hearing your thoughts and your analogies. It's just nice. Well, it's just nice. It's been a long time, you old mucker.
It's been a long time, mate, my old mucker.
So thanks very much, and
okay,
I hope everyone enjoyed that. It's a fantastic campaign.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Dean. Thank you very much, Murray. This has been thoroughly enjoyable.
We'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
See you later. Bye.